Matter of fact, I do know that we are live from Crowdcast.
Yeah. Do you want to try going live again, David?
I could try that. I don't know though if I try to end. Yeah, that'll let me because I don't want to end the broadcast by accident. How about this? I'm going to stop
Right.
sharing. Let me try to share again, and let's
Okay.
see if that does anything. Thank you everybody for your patience. Let's see. Ah, we can see now. We fresh. Woo! Okay,
Oh,
good.
okay.
Yay! Okay.
Woo!
I guess it took us
Oh,
maybe
hello.
it's taking Crowdcast and the syndication a second to kind of like catch up. So, yay! All right,
Yeah.
great. I see Anna and Maish and Apu.
Wow, a
Great. The
lot of
same.
you
Great.
popped up after that. Hello,
Yes.
Apu. Hello,
Okay.
Prague. Hello, Anna. Hello, Maish. Hello. Hello, hello. Okay, let's try that again because I
Yeah.
don't think everyone is here in that very beginning. So hello everyone. Welcome to our amazing live stream today. If you are here and you see us live, please give a thumbs up or a hello in the chat wherever you are tuning in from. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Yep, Raymond, the gang is all here. So we are going to be jumping in real quick. Let's go over this title really quickly. Crafting a cool language translation app with Langflow. So, cool language translation app. What is that? How are we going to make it cool? And Langflow. What is Langflow? What is that? What can we do with these tools? We're going to talk all about that today. My name is Melissa. For those who don't know me, I am a DevRel engineer here at DataStax. I love and have been really obsessing over GenAI content. I'm a self-proclaimed tech and GenAI content junkie. And with me today is my amazing co-host with the very, very most, David Jones
Oh my
Gilardi.
God. This is the
Take it
first
away,
time
David.
I've been entered that way, Melissa. By the way,
And
I gotta
so
say,
to everyone
Melroy.
who's on chat.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
go
love,
ahead.
Melroy, if you notice Melroy's comment, this session generated by AI and loading video message was the time it took to generate it. That's very funny. Who knows? Maybe this is. Maybe this is. All right,
Are we real
awesome. Well,
people?
thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that intro. And similar to Melissa, I'm also a coder and a GenAI nerd, and a developer relations engineer here at DataStax. Been coding a long time and having fun, especially in the GenAI space. So let's go ahead and get into some content. So overall, what are we going to tackle today? Right. So first thing, we're going to talk a little bit about the whole language translation thing and the why and the problem we're actually trying to solve. And then we're going to get into some of the tools. Melissa mentioned Langflow a minute ago. So you'll learn about Langflow if you don't know about it already, what it can do for you, and where it comes into place with this language translation app. And then we'll talk a little bit about Streamlit.io and 11 Labs.io, because both of those are kind of like major pieces of what helped make this work for me. And then finally, we'll get into the app itself, right? Babelfish.ai, and kind of have some fun with it. Oh, by the way, almost forgot. We need to ask everybody. So this is kind of a special, we're going
It's
to
very
ask you right
important.
now. Yes, very important. Do you, obviously we're speaking English, but that's not the only languages folks speaks. Do any of you speak any other languages? So put them in the chat. Let us know, because what we're going to do is we are going to grab some of maybe the top ones or favorite ones. I don't know, but we're going to grab some for the end. And then we're going to do something funny with this. I mean, how could we have a thing in a language translation app and then
Mhm.
not talk to you in your own language?
Hmm.
So I'd like to see some languages starting to pop up. Hindi, perfect. Oh, I love that one.
There
So
we
yeah, we'll
go.
kind of record some of these down. Spanish, got you,
French and
Joan.
Portuguese. That's awesome,
Ooh,
Danish,
Danish, German,
Turkish,
Turkish. Oh, this is
German,
great. So
Swedish.
we
This
have
is
people from
awesome,
all over.
guys.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna keep
Yeah.
those coming. We're gonna do something fun with those later. Okay. So you guys stick with us for that. Now, if you're not familiar with the Babelfish, maybe thumbs up or whatever. Answer in the chat if anybody here is familiar with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I am a sci-fi geek. I always have been ever since I was a kid, and I find the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is actually quite funny. It's kind of like comedic sci-fi. I see Tamil and Hebrew and stuff like that. Wonderful. Um, and
William.
and
William,
and
that's a funny one.
oh, which one? What was it?
Python, Ruby, Kotlin. I
So Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is this kind of like comedic sci-fi, and they have lots of various kind of like tongue-in-cheek jokes and that kind of deal. One of them being my favorite of all time, which is the answer to the universe is 42. And if you don't know what this means, then by all means, please please go take a look at either the movie or the book or something, and that'll make total sense. But in there, in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there is this being, this creature called the Babelfish. Now, if you think about it, you look at all these sci-fi kind of group shows out there and stuff like that. Star Wars and Star Trek and pretty much anything you can think of, and it's kind of a sci-fi trope that at some point there's this concept of a universal translator that everyone can just understand everybody else regardless of what planet they're from or anything like that. So the way that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of tackles this is with this Babelfish. And it is like this leech-like creature that goes in your ear. They like just put it in your ear. It goes up in your brain. It listens. It can like hear and pick up on all of like the brain waves from the other creatures or beings around you, and then it excretes out the translation in your own language, right? And so the goal of this, what I was actually after, as I've always thought this was just such a cool idea, right? Could we actually create something like that? And could I do it as a single dev, right? Not having, there's already tools out there today like Google Translate. There's even actually an earbud that you can buy that does like translation and such like that. They're not, what's interesting though is that there are definite limitations. They're not all very real time and seamless and that kind of deal.
Right.
And so like what I was after was, okay, as a single dev, as somebody doing this as a team of one, how doable would this be with generative AI? Could we use generative AI to create a Babelfish-like app? And then what are the gotchas? How well does this work? Things like that. So with that, I got coding, and that brings us into our setup here. Okay, so here's what I want to do. Oh yeah, by the way, I see some folks with the 42 in the chat there, so that's wonderful. I know some folks get that joke. Okay, so the first thing I hit on is I mentioned that there was this tool, Langflow. So let's step back for a second and kind of look at the problem space. So I needed some way that I could essentially translate any language into any other language. And that's great. We can do this like in a no-code way, but I also wanted to wrap an application around this because I wanted to make it more functional and put an app on it. So I needed a tool that would be able to both handle doing language translation with LLMs, hence a GenAI workflow, and then something that had some ability for me to use an API or something to wrap an app around it. So that's where Langflow comes into play. So if you're not familiar with Langflow, by the way, matter of fact, you see that little link that just popped up down there at the bottom, learn more about Langflow. Langflow is a free open source tool that allows you to visually build GenAI workflows, right? And so if you're wondering what that just meant, we're going to go through it here in just a moment. One thing I do want to point out is that in Langflow, whether you're using it on Hugging Face or if you install it yourself, or if you're using it in our service Astra or something like that, if you don't have a flow already and you say this new project, you have all these templates, right? And these templates will kind of very quickly get you started on actually building like a full GenAI workflow in a no-code way. This Babelfish one is really just a kind of bigger extension of the regular chatbot, but it does a bunch more. On the left-hand side, you'll see that there's all these like components and things. So again, it allows you to visually construct together a GenAI workflow. And this, by the way, is built on LangChain. So for those of you who might be familiar with LangChain, if you're not, no big deal. But underneath the hood, it's actually built on that. So you might recognize some of the structure. Yeah, Sean, this will be recorded and shared with you. But if you are having connection issues, go ahead and just refresh or reload your browser tab. That might help clear that up. Okay, so when you're building a GenAI workflow, you need, at a minimum, an input and an output, right? You have some way that you want to send some kind of information into whatever that workflow is going to be, and then some way you can get that information out. And so you see here the first two things, the first two types of components you have in Langflow are both inputs and outputs. And all you do is when you want to use one, that's funny. When you want to use one, you just drag it over into the interface here. Now, I've already got some that I've created. So what I'm going to do is bring these up. I'm going to zoom in on some of these, and we're going to take a look at them real quick. So like I mentioned, the first thing I need is some kind of input, right? So this is the text, this chat input. This is the text that I'm going to start with. I'm going to say, take me to your leader, right? And I want to translate this text into some language. Now, you'll notice here I have this other text input. Now, I can make this whatever I want. It could be German, it could be whatever, it doesn't really matter, right? But I'm going to keep it French for now. Okay. And this is essentially going to modify. This is going to say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to take whatever text I have here in my input. I'm going to pass it into a prompt. Now, if you're not familiar with prompts, like prompt templates, when you're working with an LLM, a large language model, like let's say it's ChatGPT or Mistral or Anthropic or something like that, and you're in their console, you can just start talking to them, but you can also prompt them, right? And prompts are really just instructions. You're telling it, this is what I want you to do. So my goal here at this point was to figure out whether or not I could create a basic language translation app just with generative AI, right? Can I do that just with generative AI? And that's what I was after. So if you notice a couple things here, you'll see I have this instruction, translate the following text into language. Now notice this curly brace language, right? So a feature in Langflow is if you put curly braces around, here, let me not slam into my mic like that. If you put curly braces around a variable name like that, it will expose it here as an input. So you can see now I can take this modification. I'm saying, hey, I want my language to be French or German or whatever it is. And then when I actually go ahead and I create the prompt, you'll see this here, when it's rendered in, it'll say translate the following text into French, right? So it's a way that I can then very quickly and easily programmatically start kind of setting some of these values. And then of course I have the user in. Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah. No, I was going to point out how you're saying, David, you went into this with the intention of building this translation app with solely generative AI. Can you kind of explain what the other, like the 180 would be from not having generative AI?
Well, yeah, that's a really great question. So if I didn't use generative AI, then I would probably have to research and find libraries that can do language translation. Now, some of those things do exist, right? But it starts getting a little hairy, right? Because there are all sorts of things you have to take into consideration. Things like idioms, things like, how are you using like kind of like looser, more informal text, or like dictionary, like formal speech or whatever, things like that. And this is actually why I decided to kind of take this route, because I was like, something, in my experience so far with LLMs, they might actually be really good at this. There's also providers out there like Mistral who that's one of the things that they're like zeroing in on is language translation and stuff like that, right? So there are some other capabilities and packages and stuff that you could go about it. But again, I am a team of one. And I wanted to see if I could do this with generative AI, and I want to see like what kind of effort would this take.
Awesome. And that's pretty much what you were explaining there with the prompt, how you can basically tell it, like, if you go back into that prompt there, how you're saying to consider these idioms and to consider casual speech, and
Yes.
the LLM can take this in and understand the instructions that you're giving it, and then give you the output that you're looking for.
Yes, that's the idea, right? Yeah, that's exactly the idea.
Yeah, awesome.
And you can see, all these curly brace languages, wherever you see that, and then we have user input over here. In every one of those places, then it will inject the value, the input value, like what you see here. And by the way, Hugh, yes, I saw your comment. Yes, thank you for the suggestion. I see Hugh noticed the Zoom. So then what we can do here is now we have this prompt, right? Now I can just feed this. I can take the result of my prompt, right? I can then feed that into an LLM like I'm doing here, right? So in this case, I'll get to why you see Grok with the Llama AP Instant model here in a moment. But, Langflow is model agnostic. It doesn't care, right? It even has support for Llama, so you can use local models as well. And what this was super cool for is when I was iterating through this and kind of experimenting, it allowed me, and I'll show this to you, but it allowed me to like iterate through different providers and models like very quickly. Because one thing I've definitely kind of learned going through this process is that, for one, the various providers like Anthropic compared to, say, ChatGPT, the prompt templates are different, right? They don't have to be exact. They don't. It's not like you have some prescriptive thing like if you don't use the templates from Anthropic, it won't work at all. But they definitely have their own idiosyncrasies, and it matters. right? So the way that you create your prompt and everything like that, the way you speak to it, the model you use, those types of things matter. So Langflow allows you that flexibility to kind of iterate through. And then the last thing is, once I have then passed that prompt into my LLM, then I get some kind of output, right? So if I go ahead and play this real quick, I build that, I should say, actually. Then what I'm doing is I'm saying this. I'm saying, I want to take me to your leader, convert it into French, pass it into this prompt we talked about, go to our LLM, and give me an output. So if I take a look at the message here, you're going to see, anybody speak French? You'll see here that we have this French, right? So it converts this. Now, Langflow has this concept of a playground. So I can go in here and I can go to the playground. And I can actually do this here. Let's see. I saw German earlier. And if I do the same thing, I'll say, take me to your leader. Now you're going to see some extra stuff come out. I'm focused just on the language translation part at the moment, but you'll see now.
Christian said it's correct.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Christian. But you see now that this is in German, right? And so what's super, super cool about this is, from like an application standpoint, or like even before I started coding, I was able to come in here and to start iterating through and kind of, seeing what prompts make sense. How can I massage the results and stuff to get what I'm looking for. Now, I will point out that is just one part of this particular flow. If you notice, if I back out, there's a little bit more going on here, but I'm going to gloss over that for now. We will come back to that. And then we're going to do some fun things. But this right here in this no code way was the basic starting point, right? And here, I'll do one more. Why not? Let's see. What language should I pick this time? It doesn't matter. We're going to do this a bunch of times. Do Hindi. I saw it.
Yeah, do Hindi.
Do Hindi. And I'm going to do take me to your leader again. Why not? I just type it. I can type take me to your leader. I love that. Okay. We'll see how this goes. Now, I have no ability to read that. So Apu, I'm going to rely on you to tell me if that's anywhere close. But yeah, and you can actually go one further. This is funny. Californian surfer. So
I love this one.
This is one that I thought was super funny. Because from the LLM perspective, it doesn't care, right? It's correct. Apu says correct. Well. That's awesome. Yeah, so I love this one. Take me to the dude who's in charge, bro. Right? So the LLMs, they definitely, they really don't care. You can actually have a lot of fun with it and everything. All right, cool. So great. So we have our initial flow. Now, this was part one. This was, I wanted to prove out, could I actually do language translation with an LLM? And it looks like I can, right? But the next part of this is, like I said, I wanted to build an app around this flow, right? And be able to then, be able to interact with some application. Because at the end of the day, I wanted an app that would actually just do these language translations and make it super easy. So if you notice down here in the bottom right, there's this API, right? So Langflow offers you can actually treat it a couple different ways. You can treat it like an API server. That is what I'm doing here in this particular case, and I'll explain some of the pros and cons. You can also just export the whole of this flow as a JSON blob. And then if you're a Python user, if you're doing it in Python, you can just import it directly into your Python, and you don't need to use Langflow as an API server. But in this case, especially for development, I found that to be super useful. But the important thing here is, does it have the capability for me to modify the inputs and the outputs, right? Because I want to be able to programmatically control this. Like, it's not going to be very useful, right? This is great to be able to get in the playground and play with. But if I want it to be useful from an application standpoint, I need to be able to change this chat input. I need to be able to change the language. I need to be able to do that on the fly. And then I need to be able to read what comes out of the end payload, right? So this API allows for that. Now, you'll see a set of options here. We have curl, right? You can just pop this right into your terminal. I'm using the Python API in this case. And something I want to point out, this is generated code that is relevant to the context of the flow you're looking at. So if you notice right here, notice the space API URL and the flow ID. That flow ID, right? That is the flow ID that I'm looking at. So it's generating this code based off of your particular flow. right? And that's the same thing, like all these components and things like that with these like uniquely generated names and stuff. These are all the components that I have in my particular flow. So I could literally grab this code. You'll see this little copy widget over here. I could just copy this, pop this into a Python script and go, right? And this will pretty much work, and it will use wherever you have this deployed as its API server. There is an option to do this with JavaScript as well, right? And honestly, you can actually just use it like that you see right here, this guy. You can just treat this as an endpoint. Here's your API endpoint. It doesn't matter what language you're in. So you're not limited to Python or JavaScript. It's just that we happen to have explicit APIs for those two. Okay, let's see. And by the way, I'm just checking to see if there's any questions or anything like that. How are we doing there, Melissa?
Sorry, I was muted. Nothing, no questions right now, but wanted to open the floor really quickly right there. If there anything that anyone is confused about or wants some clarification on, please feel free to leave your questions.
Okay.
But I did have a comment, I guess, about Langflow, and just wanted to reiterate your the idea that you were speaking about earlier is that, you came in with an idea of a flow, and you were mentioning that in generative AI, there's an input and then there's an output, and whatever goes in between is all the magic of GenAI, right? So
yeah.
That's awesome how you're able to do that visually here in Langflow and have that process. But that can only go so far of being stuck in this playground UI as well. So just wanted to hone in to all the viewers watching is that this is really powerful. The fact that you can click that API button on the bottom, and then now I can bring in this capability that I just built within Langflow, and then embed it into an existing code that I want, so that I can deploy it now into an actual application, or make any tweaks that I wanted to programmatically, which is what David was explaining there with what if you want to change things, and that's obviously going to make it a lot more powerful. So I just wanted to hone in on that.
All right, got you. Yeah, by the way,
we have some questions here actually.
Yeah, I'm seeing them. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So Sean was saying, struggle to start it with Langflow. What's the best way to troubleshoot issues or get help? Sean, we have a Langflow Discord that's open.
Yes.
And a lot of our team, the Langflow team, we work really closely together. So there's a community growing there. So please join that Discord as well. I think it's present on the Langflow website, but we can also share that as a resource following up.
Yes, it is on. If you go to langflow.org, I believe the Discord's up in the top right. Yep, right there. So if you just click that, and if you're not already there, you should be able to go to the Discord.
There you go. Benchmark DSS says that's amazing. Makes it agnostic for any LLM extracting the Python code. Yep. And aside from that too, to the point of any LLM, David was just showing how easy it was to kind of go through that component section on the left side and essentially choose what LLM that you want to use and iterate through different versions of the outputs. And then once you've kind of felt satisfied with what output that you're getting within the Langflow UI or output within Langflow, then you can then bring that into your code and then do more with it there.
Yeah. And Morton, to your question about Langflow versus Flowwise, I think that's actually a great question for the Discord channel, honestly. Because matter of fact, there's somebody I'm going to point you to, Mizba. Mizba is out on that Discord. He is actually quite familiar with Flowwise, and he would be a very good person to reach out to on Discord, specifically to ask that question. And by the way, I see Wojtek's question, can this workflow be coupled with Zapier for any good reason? Something I didn't really point out here is that Langflow, like all of this under the hood, right? It's all Python, right? So for you Python devs out there, even if you're not a Python dev, honestly, but it's all Python under the hood, and you can customize these components. And we do, in fact, have something called custom components. There's even a component called custom component that's like a boilerplate one for you. But you can make whatever components you want. As far as your comment with like Zapier, I believe we actually have some Zapier components in the works like right now, but it almost doesn't matter. Like originally, when I built this, and I'm actually going to pop over here for a second to Babelfish itself. Originally, when I built this, one of my goals was to generate voice with my voice in any other language. And I do that with 11 Labs. That's where 11 Labs comes into this, and we will get to that part of it. I had originally built a custom component for the 11 Labs API directly in Langflow. But it was pointed out to me that if I was ever going to deploy this, that I needed to have the sound portion coming through the browser on the front end, because everything I did originally was in Python, right? So I eventually moved 11 Labs to the front end, and you'll see that. But it took me no time at all to actually create an 11 Labs component. So you can really create custom components pretty much for any library or package. There is a Langflow store, though. It's a community store where people are always putting up their own components and everything. And there's all sorts of variations. There's a Jira one, there's a Discord one, there's a Notion one. So pretty much anything you can think of, you could probably create a custom component for. Okay, so here's what I want to do. So we talked a little bit about the initial flow here. So we've got this initial flow, this initial language translation flow, and we have an API that allows us to wrap an application around it. Now, what I really want to point out about this API real quick is this. If I go to the Python API, which is what I'm using, if I scroll down a little bit, you'll see this run flow function, right, and message. So if I modify message, right, that is this value here. That's this input, okay? And then if I want to modify the language programmatically, then what I'm going to do is something called a tweak. So you'll notice that I have references to all of the various components here. But let's say that I want to learn, well, how do I modify this programmatically, right? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my language component. And by the way, notice how there's a generated name and then a given name. Like I gave it the name language. That is something as a takeaway, that even my outputs, I give them names. The reason why is because those names are consistent. It's much easier to understand those names than it is looking at something like, my bad. Looking at something like text input, there we go, UFUC6, right? So it's definitely, I would say it's kind of like a good practice to do that. But if I came in here and let's say that I said Hindi, okay, and I put this here and I come back, you'll see the tweak right there. So this is telling me in code, how do I make that change, right? And this is going to become important here in a moment. That's what I'm going to show you next. Okay. All right. So here is Babelfish, right? So this is the Babelfish app itself. Right now, I am set to translate English. I can choose now. Just to make it so the list wasn't crazy, I just put an other in here. You can put whatever you want. So this is the equivalent. So if I say like put in French, for example, I am doing the same thing as I am setting this guy, right? So I'm just tweaking the value is what I'm doing. And then I can, of course, again, do take me to your leader, right? And then you'll see this hit. There it goes. And then here you go. You can see the French here of take me to your leader, right? So this is essentially doing the same thing that we did in our app or in our flow, but now it's just doing it in the app. And just kind of bring this together a little bit. Now, I'm going to show you some code. Don't worry about trying to understand all the code. That's not really the point. But what I do want you to see real quick is, this. So notice right here. So what I did is this code is pretty much just me implementing the Python API. I'm just taking this code here, and I've just put it in its own Langflow runner class. I'm an old Java developer. I cannot help doing things in an object-oriented class structure. That's totally beside the point. But so I've just taken that and I've implemented it. So it's the same thing, this run flow, right? And then what happens is, here's what I want you to notice. Right here, you see this tweak? Right there, text input UFUC6, language to speak. So when I am in here in Streamlit here, this is actually Streamlit. When I'm changing this dropdown, that is then modifying my language to speak variable, which is then modifying the tweak, right? So this is the tie-in. This is how I'm then tweaking the values of what you're seeing here in this flow to make this whatever it is I pull in from my app, right? And then if you look down here, you see I have this run flow and the message. So the message is just going to be, what did I type, right? So at its like most basic level, I can just take this code, find out where my tweaks are. Even if I have any, I may not have any, copy it, pop it over, and now I can start modifying things programmatically. And then you'll see some extra things going on. Let's do this. All right, let me do another one real quick. Just Japanese is super fun. I don't know if we have anybody here who can speak Japanese.
Yeah, any Japanese speakers in the chat, let us know.
Now, okay, so this is just now the
That's
start. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's really cool how even with Hindi it's able to transcribe these characters as well. The
Yeah.
LLM is super powerful in that way. That's
Well,
awesome.
that's it right there, right? Like I found that the ability of the LLMs, again, I was a developer of one here trying to do this, right? I don't have the resources,
Mhm.
of having like the whole Google Translate team or something like that, right? And I found the LLMs to be super super powerful and effective in doing this, right? But let's take this one. I want to talk a little bit about now. Let's see, what else can we say? Now, something about the LLMs that's actually kind of interesting, and something about doing language translation as it is, right? Let's see, can I? Oh, that one actually did an exact translation. Um, that let's see, that one did an exact translation. What I wanted to do, let's see if we can get a variation. Okay. This is so funny. So this is like one of those cases where it's being awfully consistent right now. But as I was going through my process, what I noticed was depending on the LLM that I used, um, some of them were looser with the instructions than others, right? And so this comes into like a really cool feature
Mm.
of Langflow. So I mentioned earlier that I was purposely using Langflow in this case as an API server. That I'm literally using this server up here live, right, as we're doing this. So one of the really
Mhm.
cool features, like what I can do here is, let's say I want Anthropic. Let's say I want to experiment, right? I can come in here. I can go, okay, let's go ahead and take Grok Llama API out. I'm going to wire up Anthropic. Okay, so I can just do this visually. Now, I do need, I'm going to pick a model. In this case, Claude 3.5 Sonnet worked great. Now, notice this API key, and you're going to see these values here. All these are globals, right? So Langflow has this feature that I can come in here and I can, name something. I can store credentialed values or just generic values, and then I can save that. And when I do that, these values are then available to all of my components, all of my flows. It's a really nice convenience feature. So I just wanted to, call out that's where that's coming from. So I had to go through Anthropic and get a key, just like I have to go to Grok and get a key and so on and so forth. But now I can just wire
Mhm.
it up. I can just go, right? Now I have a new model in the works, right? So it immediately, oh yeah. Yeah. So this is the one I have the California surfer in this one, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's seeing the variations and outputs between different LLM. It's really cool.
yeah. Yeah. Now I can come in here and I can test out these variations. Um,
Mhm.
and now I'm just using a different model, right? Now this, my example here, it's funny because like I said, I've done this for a while, and usually the Llama 8B gives me more variations, but this time it's actually being super consistent. And I found that Anthropic was actually a lot better at being very consistent with the translations and everything like that.
Mhm.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to point that out, that this allows me to kind of, you know, have lots of variations. I can come in here and I can iterate. One of the things I actually did in the very beginning is, instead of wiring up a different flow like this, I actually had a set of different models, and then I had them all going to their own outputs, so I could do everything in parallel. I could come over the playground, and then I could test it out. I could see which ones were more accurate, which ones were faster, things like that. So it allowed me to iterate. It allowed me to iterate pretty fast. Okay, so now coming back over to Babelfish here. So great, we're doing this with text, right? So I think at this point we've answered, can we do the language translation with an LLM? Can we do it with text? Yes, but the big one was audio, right? And this is now where 11 Labs comes into play. So by the way, if I didn't mention this about Streamlit, we haven't gotten to the Streamlit part yet. Both, I built this in Python. My focus was on the Python and the GenAI parts. And if you're coming in and maybe if you're not a JavaScript developer or somebody who's not on the front end, Python isn't known for its very flashy front ends. Streamlit is a super cool tool, Streamlit.io, that allows you to like really quickly whip up like very usable and workable front ends. I am using Streamlit here. As a matter of fact, I think it was this one. Yeah, I think I used this as a base. So here they already had a nice little template that I could use
Mhm.
to create a chatbot. And then what's cool about Streamlit is, if I pop over here, you'll see all these components that we have. right? And if I scroll up a little bit, all I have to do, you'll see something like this, like with ST sidebar. So Streamlit, by the way, if you look at my imports, you'll see Streamlit is alias is ST. And so you'll see with ST sidebar. So anything now, notice you don't really see any HTML or JavaScript, right? But I'm able to wire up this front end pretty quickly. So like the caption, right? A Streamlit translation chatbot powered by Langflow. And that's this guy right up here, right? So it's got this kind of like nice linear flow. It allows me to very quickly kind of get like drop downs and do all sorts of, you can do like, session variables, all that kind of thing. Okay. All right. So let's have some fun then with the voice. All right. So the other part then is I wanted to be able to do this. It's one thing to do a text translation. I think that's actually super cool. I can pick whatever language, I can translate into another language, and I can go back and forth and such like that. But what happens if I wanted to speak, right? I think Christian is a French speaker. Let's go ahead and pick French. And then if we say, hello, everyone in the live stream today. Oh, I need to share my tab. Hold on. You're not going to hear that. Let me fix this real quick. Please hold. We've learned this little. Right, let me share this again. Here we go.
Christian's still here, so he can tell us if this is pretty accurate.
Okay. Here, let me get that. Make sure that's the right thing here. Sorry. There it goes. That's what I need. Aha. Here we go. You should see the right thing now.
Awesome.
All right.
And Christian's listening now, so
you're listening. All right, good. Let's see. Right.
I don't think I heard that one, David.
I didn't hear it either. That's super funny. This is going to be, I sacrifice lots of things to the demo gods today. Let's see what's going on here.
Please be on our side.
Salut tout le monde sur le live aujourd'hui.
All right, how about that one, Christian?
And keep listening of that voice. Let us know if that voice sounds familiar as well.
Should we do another one?
Yeah.
Oh, Hugh speaks French. Cool. Should we do another one? Okay.
Salut tout le monde sur le live aujourd'hui. On en fait un autre.
Oh, Japanese. All right, we'll do Japanese. Why not? And I'll do this again. This is going to be a good one.
Christian said parfait.
That's great.
ライブ配信を見てる皆さん、こんにちは。
All right, we'll have to see if the Japanese one goes. And Henrik, I'll do a Swedish one. Is it just Swedish? I guess we'll find out. I'll say Swedish and see what happens here. I've not done Swedish before, so this will be fun. I always like the new ones.
Hej alla som tittar på livestreamen idag.
All right, so while we're waiting for folks to kind of let us know how that's going, what's super cool about this, you may have recognized the voice, right? Or maybe you recognize the voice. Maybe you didn't. I'm not sure. But that is actually, oh, that's great, Christian. Thank you. So for the voice, that is 11 Labs. So if you're not familiar with 11 Labs, they do AI generated voices, and there are tons of options here. I was already using 11 Labs, but the feature that I was really after was the fact that you can trade in on your own voice. It only needs like 5 minutes of your own voice. We also did Melissa as well. Cool. Thank you, Henrik.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I see those coming in. So like we're in 11 Labs. I'm actually super impressed with them, by the way. Their API was super straightforward, right? So it actually took me less effort to tie in the voice and get that going than it did to do any of the audio portions. Honestly, the audio portions were a bit tricky. Okay, so Melissa, how about this? I'm checking time and things like that. Seems like that's going well.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I stop sharing and let's go ahead and see what happens when you speak to me. And so for all of you who don't know, Melissa speaks Tagalog, right? And so we've been having some fun seeing whether or not we could speak to each other. So she's going to say some stuff to me in Tagalog, and then I will say some stuff back to her, and where she's going to speak in Tagalog and speak to me in English, and then I'll say some stuff back to her in English, but back to her in Tagalog. Let's see how this goes.
Right. Because I think one thing that David didn't get to yet for showing is that not only can you just type what you are looking to translate, but you can actually speak into it and also get that back. So it can also take your actual voice as audio input and then translate that back and hopefully sound it in my voice. So let's try this here. If I want to translate to English and then speak in Tagalog or Filipino. And I'll do any disclaimers if any Filipinos are watching that my Tagalog is conversational at best. So I just wanted to let you all know before anyone says
I don't
anything.
know. Your Tagalog sounds great
I'm
to me, Melissa.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I'm more of my dialect, so my Tagalog is okay. So anyway, let's try this. I'm gonna start this. Kamusta ka sa inyong lahat?
How are you all doing?
Nice. And you see how it picked up the Tagalog, right? Like it.
Anong ginagawa mo? I'll stop that real quick. Oh, did that stop the translation, David?
Yes, it stopped it. You'd have to do it again.
Oh. Anong ginagawa mo?
What are you doing?
Well, that was a new robot version of Melissa.
Saan ka pupunta?
Where are you going?
Oh, sorry, I should stop doing that. But anyway, I just wanted to show a couple examples in another language going into English, because one thing that we've noticed when you're doing it with with an LLM is that when we tried speaking in a different language the first time, it didn't really get that you were speaking another language initially. It was trying to transcribe it in English. So it's really cool that and David could probably expand a little bit more on this on how he did it, but you can tell the transcription process in between this that to detect another language. So it's able to get any other language and then translate that back into English, and it's doing it really well. And another piece that I wanted to point out there, and I'll do another translation here in a minute, is that it's also detecting any sentiment or idioms or casual tones that I might be saying
Yes.
in the other language, and then putting that in a note underneath the translation as well. And I noticed this too, David. This is a comment for you, is that this is great for people who might even be learning a new language, because there's a bunch of nuances with learning languages and the idioms. And like we were talking about this with Korean, how there's like casual, informal, formal tones that might be hard to grasp when you're maybe just reading about it. But when you hear it said back to you and then have that like explanation under you how you've implemented is a really cool tool. And that's what makes this a cool translation app, because it goes beyond just the, you know, here's what I want to say, here's how you say it, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
let
there's
me
actually a great that's a great segue. Thank you, Melissa, for that. Let me grab the share again.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. I know we're kind of running a little on time, so let me give it back to you.
Here we go. Let me so what I'll do is no, Benchmark, I have not tried that yet. So that's something to take a look at. And by the way, Melissa's voice doesn't have her generated voice doesn't have the same quality. Specifically because we literally just trained her voice like the other day. Or thought, hey, that would be super cool. Where I sat down and actually trained mine properly. We literally gave hers a video, a promotional video.
Yeah. So I only had one tone to all the way through Benchmark. So that's a really good call out. So there's so many ways in that 11 labs that you can sit down and, you know, I think you read certain text to it, right, David? And train it a bit better. So maybe that's why we heard Robot Melissa there.
Yeah, exactly. So by the way, so going to what Melissa was saying there real quick, and then we'll wrap things up. So one of the things to her point that I came to realize, right, was exactly what she just said. Sometimes, like I know I can speak a little French, right? I speak enough Spanish that a lot of times when I was translating, I could say understand what was going on. But let's say for a second, maybe there's an idiom like we're going to have to bite the bullet, right? Does that translate? right? There's some languages that may, there's some that they don't. And so what kind of dawned on me was that might be good to not only get the sentiment, because what happens if you misunderstand? Like if I'm speaking to somebody who is from another culture and another language, and I don't know the language well, I may not identify if maybe they're angry. Maybe I'm on the phone and I don't see their body language or something like that. Or maybe I'm just missing the context. And so you'll see down here this note that she was talking about, right? So it's talking about like, bite the bullet, and it'll talk about like the phrase that it gives, like, and why that it gave the translation it did and everything. And to do that, all we had to do was wire up. So if I go to here's the original flow, right? This is the original one I had. But now you'll see coming off that same initial input, that same text, I have a language detect flow and a sentiment detect. And these are just different prompts that are essentially saying, hey, I want you to detect the language here. Or I want you to not only detect the sentiment, but then here's the style I want you to use, right? And the LLMs are actually pretty darn good at this. And if you're also wondering why exactly did I use like 4 different LLM providers here, or different models, right? You can see I've got Anthropic up here with Claude 3.5. I've got Grok here. I was actually using Gemma, but I switched over to Llama Instant. I've got OpenAI down here. And if you're wondering why, it's because I found that for different tasks, different LLMs and different models were better or worse at them. And so as I started to kind of like go down and kind of narrow things out, that started to really come through. And so that's where when you see the detected language, the sentiment, and the note, that's where all that is coming from, right? Is that I have these extra outputs, and notice they're all named, right? So all these guys, if I do a full thing, if I go to the playground, you'll notice how every one of these gives me, I get the language, I get the sentiment, I get the translation, and I get the note. And that's coming out to me in a JSON blob, right? That's coming out to me in this payload. Yeah, by the way, benchmark, Anthropic does do a really nice job. I really like their models, honestly. And so if we were to take a look at, there we go, right here. So you'll see that when I am executing against the API, I have a method that I wrote called extract output message. But instead of trying to iterate through all of the various JSON objects and that kind of deal, what I do is essentially I just get the response, the JSON response that comes out from the API itself. And then I just say, hey, use the component display name. So remember I said over here that if I give these outputs, I'm giving them explicit names. Well, now I can key off of those names, right? I can just say, hey, what's the comment display name? And now that makes it like super easy for me to be able to pull out exactly what I need from the payload. And then this way as well, if I'm in here making changes, like let's pretend for a second that I made some change and I needed to do something different with the chat output and I did some custom. This will now have a different ID, right? It's going to have a different ID. If I was going off of this and I changed my flow in this way, now I may get an error in my code because it's expecting something from the payload that it's not seeing. But by using these explicit names like this, then I can hone in directly on what I need and be consistent. All righty.
Awesome,
all right. So let's go ahead now. I did see we're kind of at the end of the
Wojtek did say something really quick about the functionality. Being able to automatically skip clicking the button, start translating, stop translating. Yeah. We've talked about that a little bit, Wojtek. Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, this is okay. So that's a funny observation. This was one thing. So what I really didn't mention is underneath the hood, Streamlit has this ability to have custom components. This is actually, so when we're speaking into it, or when we're doing that voice translation that you hear, right? Then I'm actually taking a byte stream right from the browser, sending it over a WebSocket to the backend, to the Python code, handling all the transcription and getting the translated text out, and then sending that back over to LevLabs in the front end. So it sounds like a lot, and it kind of is, but Streamlit actually made that super easy. And with Streamlit components, right? It actually handles all the WebSockets and stuff for you. So this is where this comes in. So what you're seeing down here is actually this chunk is a Streamlit component using React Mic. And then the 11 Lab part is also using a Streamlit component. The reason why this is actually something I want to improve. I'm happy for any PRs. The reason why, though, you see this kind of clunky, I'll admit, clunky interaction is because this is actually opening up the back end to the feed, but then triggering. I was having a challenge, honestly, of correctly triggering the front end button in React to kick. Right. So I, and part of that was because of the Streamlit thing. I was actually talking to Melissa about this earlier. If I redid this, I might just start with like a Next.js app and do it a little bit more traditionally in the way that I would, but I was focused on doing it with like Python. And that might make that a little easier, but that is something I would love to resolve. Okay, so let's see. So I did see somebody who wanted to say something in Russian. So if you guys, we're going to go ahead and tail it off now. We saw a bunch of cool languages in the beginning. We've actually done a couple of them. Were there any interesting ones, Melissa, that we should try before we sign off today?
So I saw Punjabi. I saw
Punjabi. Okay.
Yep. And then the Russian accent. They wanted to hear how good the Russian accent was.
All right, let's do it. And if you want, feel free to give me some phrases that you think might be fun and tell me what language you want it in, and we will see how well this goes. Now, I heard Punjabi. Punjabi, is it Punjabi?
But like Punjabi, I think, yeah.
Like that? Okay. And thank you, everyone, for coming to the live stream today. And thank you for all the fish. Let's see what happens here.
AJD live stream tiya only to hadda Sarianda Dhanwadati Sarian Machi only to hadda Dhanwad.
You're gonna have to tell me if that's anywhere close. I heard. Let's hear the Russian accent. Let's see. Let me put this Russian.
Feel free chat in the chat to give more phrases or languages that you might speak wherever you're tuning in from. If you want to hear it.
Спасибо всем, кто пришел сегодня на прямой эфир, и спасибо за всю рыбу.
I mean, that sounded legit. I have no idea. Yeah, that's Russian.
Yeah. It sounds great to me, but please tell us.
Yeah, Apu, to that point, there are parameters that you can tweak when you are doing the sound generation from 11 Labs that you can try to slow it down and things like that. There's all sorts of little knobs that you can tweak. As a matter of fact, the audio processing part of this was the hardest part of this app. All the rest of the stuff, like everything we've talked about, creating these flows, wrapping the API, doing the initial language translation was actually pretty straightforward and easy. It wasn't that hard. Handling the audio processing, the part that, you can't see that. The part that... Sorry, I did that to all of you. I should have, when it re-renders, it re-speaks them all. So you got them all at once. But yeah, the audio processing part was actually the hardest thing. Being able to filter out background noise properly, being able to detect what is noise and what's a speech, right? And what's human speech. Not only that, like being able to pick up when someone's speaking a language other than English. All of that was the hard part. Let's see.
But then to your point, David, about like all of those things being the hard part, you got the GenAI stuff down. What you wanted to put as an input and what you wanted to get out as an output, that was easily, I mean, like, loosely using the word easily, done using Langflow as a tool. And then it gave you more time to focus on all of these other moving parts that surround the application and the whole experience. So I thought that was really cool.
Yep, and to your point about the GitHub repo, I saw that comment there, Hugh. Here you go. Here's the GitHub repo, or it didn't happen. Totally with you, man. And Wojtek, I'm totally with you on the buttons, right? This, let's be honest. This is not something that I'm trying to publish commercially or anything. It is to express an idea, right? My take on it, though, is feel free to go to the GitHub repo, and if you want to fix that, I'm happy for your PR. I very well may actually get to it myself, but I'm with you, Wojtek. That wasn't one of my favorite parts. But yes, there is the GitHub repo. This is actually real. You can do whatever with it that you want. The flow that I used is also there in that repo. You'll see the babelfish.ai.json. So if you were to install Langflow yourself, all you have to do is upload that JSON and you'll get the whole flow, right? So have fun, experimenting that. And I know we're a little over time. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us today. And hopefully you got something out of that. With that, Melissa, I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you again to everybody here who has tuned in. I know we lost a few of you on the way, but to the people who are interacting throughout the whole time, thank you so much again. Again, it's been Melissa here as well as David, and I hope that you got something really cool out of this. Feel free to continue tuning into our future live streams. And again, thank you all so much for watching. We'll have some resources sent out to you right after this for those who missed it or for those who missed some of the links. So look out for that. But again, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
All right, thank you, everybody. See ya.